Hey yo, welcome everybody to another episode of Squares for Squares. I'm your host Neil, and I wanted to let everybody know before we get kicked off here, change the format of the show a little bit. I'm a dad, I've got kids, I've got work, I've got all kinds of other crazy stuff that I have besides reviewing comics. So it's a little bit difficult for me to review comics for the same week that I'm purchasing them, in that I go to the comic book store, buy them, and then review them. A little bit difficult. So what I'm going to be doing is doing individual reviews of comics, but letting you know kind of what I'm buying for that week, keeping in mind the $20 budget. With that said, let's dive into Immortal Men #1. So this is from DC Comics, came out for $11.18 for $2.99. Writing here is by Jim Lee, James Tynion IV, and Ryan Benjamin. We've got art and covers from Jim Lee, and we've got colors from Jeremiah Skipper and Alex Sinclair. I'm just going to read from my notes here a little bit because there's so many characters and powers here that it's a little difficult to remember. So our main character here is Caden Park. He is what appears to be a psychic, both in his mind and by touch, and perhaps a little precog abilities there, in that he may be able to see the future. I don't know if that's the case there. We have a character that we unfortunately get to see meet their end called Windstrider, who has weather control powers. The man who ends his life is called The Hunt, kind of a Wolverine-ish character. Appears to have some sort of, super sense, weapons mastery, and looks like he's a blood psychic too. There's a piece of the book where he sort of sniffs the blood and is able to see what his victim's life was like. We then have the Infinite Woman, who appears to be the antagonist of the book. Not really sure what her powers are at this point. She looks very impressive, but we don't really get to see kind of what she's able to do. Great here that the Batman Who Laughs is back again. We got his power set is essentially Batman. You got genius intellect, master strategist. He's lost his mind and is insane, so a little bit of the Joker in there too. And he's got his set of crowing Robin minions, which are awesome. Next we have the kind of mysterious elder of the group, I guess, Immortal Man. He doesn't even show up in the book, or maybe he does. I don't know. We have yet to see what Immortal Man actually looks like. So there's questions there. I'm not sure what his powers are at all. Then we have the Ghost Fist. This character appears to have magic powers. It may be electricity. It's hard to tell. But given that he's able to transport people to different places, I would think it's some kind of magic. Then we have a character called Reload. I'm not sure if he has any other powers, but it appears that he's some kind of weapons master. He's got two cool looking guns, so I'm thinking that that's probably what his skill set is. Then we have Timber, who is Native American, and it looks like her powers are growing, so getting larger and maybe getting smaller. We definitely see that she can get larger in the book. And then our last person here is called Stray, which looks like she has kind of the powers of an animal, increased strength and sensing and viciousness, that kind of thing. And then the Bloodless, who appear to be the minions of the Infinite Woman. I'm not really sure what their powers are. They're gross looking, kind of xenomorphish, and they may be demons. I don't know. It's yet to be revealed kind of where they come from. The book starts out introducing us to our main character again, Caden Park, as we see him in the midst of a dream. And in the dream, there's kind of mystical things going on in this underground city that complete with pyramid and floating air rocks, called what he calls the campus. We also find out that he's having these visions and had previously had them while he was sleeping. Now he's having them during the daytime, and sort of waking up out of these dreams, not knowing what's going on. We also find out that he is able to, when he touches people, see their thoughts. So he's kind of confused by what's going on. We also see him meeting with his psychiatrist in the story, and the psychiatrist and his parents have sort of attributed his visions and his mind-reading power to a meeting that he apparently had with Superman. Either he saw him or met him in person, but they attributed his, quote-unquote visions to this Superman encounter, and just essentially wanting to have a more special life and not live a boring, mundane life. We find out that he, it looks like he's somewhat wealthy. It looks like he goes to a private school. He's wearing a suit throughout the story. And we get to meet his parents, but I'm not really sure kind of what's going on with them, how they gained their wealth, that kind of thing. There's mention of the dad going to meet up with the Carthage group. Not really sure who they are. I tried to look up on DC's website who the Carthage group was, and I didn't find anything. So if you are aware of a Carthage group in DC Comics before, maybe it's a huge thing and I just missed it, but let me know in the comments a little bit about that. Of note, Carthage was the capital of the Carthaginian Empire, ancient Carthaginian Empire, that was later seized by the Romans in North Africa. So a little bit of history there. I don't know if that ties into anything because we're talking about immortals, but just kind of something to think about. We then jump over to a scene where we see a horribly beaten down character, later revealed to be Windstrider, being struck down by the Hunt, and he basically says, "The Immortal Man told me that I would live forever," and the Hunt says, "Well, you were wrong. He lied to you." And we meet this character, the Hunt, who again is kind of a Wolverine-ish character. I hate to say, but it's definitely a call to that kind of a character, Wolverine type, Lobo type. Kind of cool though that we learn about his power a bit, in that he's able to read the past history of all of his victims, and I guess the blood powers him in some way. So I'm not sure how that all works, but there's a little bit revealed there. So we may learn a little bit more about sort of his encounter with the blood. We then get to see the Infinite Woman, who is starting or restarting or amping up her war against the Immortal Man by killing all of his disciples. We learn the name of her team is called the Conquest, and apparently they're looking to completely eliminate the Immortal Man. We see the Batman Who Laughs is back in this scene with his crowing robins. Not really sure what part he's playing here. He makes mention of learning that there was a race of immortals that were more or less controlling history, and he's sort of the muse behind this reinitiated war against Immortal Man and his team. Not really sure if he's in control or if Infinite Woman is in control. I think probably the latter, but because the Batman Who Laughs, I would assume, really doesn't care just as long as there's chaos and darkness. We then get introduced to the Immortal Men, Ghost Fist, Timber, Reload, and Stray, as we see some New York subway workers exploring the subway tunnels when they find Ghost Fist, who promptly transports them out of the tunnels. We then see the other characters, Reload, Stray, and Timber, as they stand around the carcass of one of these bloodless demons, and find out that the reason why they're there is that Immortal Man has instructed them to go after Caden, who's said to be the savior of the world. Not everybody is happy with this decision, as we see Timber very upset that she was taken out of the battle against the Conquest, and taken here against her will, essentially. The story then jumps over to Caden, who we see is on a subway with his buddies Wells and Brandon when he spots the man from his dream about the campus in the subway, walking away from him. So he, of course, follows him into another subway car, and we learn that this is all sort of an elaborate trap for Caden and by the Infinite Woman. The other passengers on the train begin to mutate into the Bloodless, and the man who he saw is actually just a hologram. Of course, the top of the subway breaks open, the subway car breaks open, and the Immortal Men step in, and that's kind of where the issue leaves off. So lots of fun stuff happening in this comic, and we'll see what happens in issue 2. Some of the pros here with this book: the story is very dense, a lot of things going on in this story, a lot of questions I have about the characters, about where they came from and where they're going. And James Tynion the fourth is back. JT4 is back, writing another great book that he's looking to continue on, because I see him on the next issues as well. And then we get to see the Batman Who Laughs is back again, which is awesome. And of the bunch of the newly launched New Age of Heroes line, this one appears to be, I think, the least Marvel-ish of the bunch, although there are some hints of Illuminati and the X-Men here that are definitely present. A little difficult to understand this whole New Age of Heroes launch. A lot of the characters, at least on the surface, and mind you, I haven't read all of the books, but on the surface are a definite, I don't want to say plagiarized version, but definitely a call to some of the Marvel characters. We have Brimstone, who appears to be a Ghost Rider knockoff. We have Damage, who's the Hulk knockoff. The Silencer, who's the Punisher knockoff. Not sure why they went with the Silencer. I mean, it sort of sounds like the Punisher. Could have picked a different name. But anyway, it really kind of feels like DC is going for a cash grab here for a Marvel product that's kind of floundering at this point. So looking to shamelessly steal what they've done in the past that's been successful and brand it as DC, and in turn bring over some readers from Marvel. Some of the cons here, it's really only one for me. Jim Lee is one of my favorite artists of all time, but this book was not his strongest piece. I think that, now that he's one of the DC executives, that he's kind of tapped for time, and it really kind of showed in this issue that it looked a little rushed. Some of the images and splash pages were a little subpar here. Luckily, I think having him on covers is probably the best choice to continue to display his great art, and at the same time hand the reins over to someone else who's more dedicated to the books, because it looks like Ryan Benjamin, who I'm a huge fan of, is set to take over on the artwork moving forward. So questions here. The first one off the top of my head is, where did the Immortal Men come from? We saw at the end of Dark Knight's Metal them sort of allude to the fact that the other universes kind of meshed together. So I'm not sure if that's the case, or if they've been around this whole time in the DC universe, just sort of hidden, kind of like the Court of Owls in Batman. So it'll be interesting to find out where they come from and their whole history there. And where is the Immortal Man? We don't even get to... Maybe we do see him. Maybe he's the guy with the beard in the book, but we don't get a clear picture or understanding of Immortal Man and what his powers are. And what's his relationship with Infinite Woman? So very interesting there to find out kind of the background behind Immortal Man. And what's going on with Infinite Woman? What are her abilities? We don't really get to see that in this book. There's also a hint at potentially being a sibling or family member of Immortal Man. Is she his sister? Is she his mother? Not really sure. And what's the point of all? What's her motive for her conquest? Is it simply just to be evil, to destroy those of who she feels are not worthy, or is there something else behind that triggered this attitude towards humanity and immortals? And the conquest, are there more members? We haven't seen that yet. One thing when I was reading through that may have been looked over was Caden's parents. His dad especially has sort of this mystic, ambiguous aura about him. Not really sure the history behind him. Is he one of the immortals? Is he actually Immortal Man? How did he gain his wealth? Or is that his wife's wealth? So a lot of questions, at least for me, about what's going on with Caden's parents. And this is sort of not connected, but connected to this story. But what happened to the Joker at the end of Dark Knight's Metal? We see that obviously the Batman Who Laughs has survived, but what happened during their battle in Dark Knight's Metal? At the end, we sort of see the Joker and the Batman Who Laughs fighting as the cave that they're in collapses around them. Does this have any ties to the three Jokers that are out there? Remember, Batman learned that there were three Jokers while he was sitting in the Mobius chair. So has that other Joker died? Is the Joker that's set to return in Batman a different Joker? So questions there that'll probably be revealed in Batman, but maybe in this story too, with the Batman Who Laughs. And that's going to wrap us up for Squares for Squares. What I'm looking to purchase this week, keeping in mind my budget of $20, is X-Men number 26, X-Men Gold, I should say, number 26. Hate to be a sucker, but I am. I'm gonna buy Action Comics number 1000 just because it's kind of a monumental mark in comic books history. And then Batman number 45 looks like a start of a new arc there with Booster Gold involved, so interesting to see what happens there. And lastly, Skyward from Image Comics, Skyward number 1. So I'll be doing a review of all of those, and I hope you have a great new comic book day this week, and I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.